Hello there. Hi. Welcome to Butterfly Effect. I'm your host, Tristan Ettleman. I feel like I need like a catchphrase or something after that. It just feels like I'm falling flat. This is a podcast all about interviewing people. Oh, there it is. I could end this and be like, hi there, hello, welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm your host, Tristan Ettleman. This is a podcast all about interviewing people. Perfect. But, too late. This is natural. That's pretty natural. I don't need a catchphrase or something. Just need something that I can stick to and be able to introduce the show and not get all up in my head about it. Anyways, this is the second episode of Butterfly Effect. Thank you for listening. If you haven't, or if you did listen to the first episode, do that and thank you. Because the first one I kind of explained the show and what the format is and everything. And actually, you'll probably pick up what it is just in this episode just by listening. But I didn't want to lump it in with the first episode with a guest because I just didn't. I felt like that'd be kind of a disservice and trying to cram too much into one thing. So I did the first episode to kind of launch the show proper, and now here we are. This is the show. This is actually the thing with interviews. And this first one is with Josh Ruben, who you probably know from CollegeHumor. He's a comedian, actor, director. And we had a great conversation. But just a few notes about this episode and this kind of the show in general. There's going to be some sound quality things with this episode in particular, actually, because I recorded in a room that was very open and echoey, and I don't know why I did that. So I kind of sound a little weird. And then the show is done over Skype because I live in Phoenix, so I can't get to where people are actually at, and no one comes here. So we do it over Skype, so if there's any kind of sound quality issues there, that might also be the part of internet connection or Skype connection or just whatever setup people have in their homes. So just as a note, another thing, we recorded this back in September because Josh, this is the first episode, he was also my first guest that I actually sat down with. So we recorded this all the way back in September. Some of the things we talk about that are happening currently or are going to be happening soon happened already, or just not in the right time. And that's because it was recorded like 3-4 months ago. Because it's a long process of getting guests when you don't actually have a podcast or a website or anything on iTunes. But hopefully that'll change. And on that note, I kind of beseech you for help, and I do plugs and everything at the end of the show, on the other end of the interview. But I kind of beseech you to share this with your friends and, just kind of get the word out there. I'm trying. But if you like this format and the kind of people I can get on here, then it really helps if you support it. Because it sounds weird to say, but if you go like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And it's like you have no traffic, to be like, no. But if you go like, hey, look, I had this person on and I get however many views. I'm not saying I'm going to say that explicitly, but people will see that and they'll be more likely to want to come on. So that's, if you want to see other people, that helps. If I have a successful podcast, more people want to come on it. But in the meantime, I still had a great guest who wanted to come on it, even though I had nothing to show him, Josh Ruben. And I still am very blown away by his generosity and his graciously accepted invitation to come on the show. Because I emailed him, I was like, hey, I don't have anything. You want to come on? And he's like, sure. And I'm a big fan of Josh. I used to watch a lot of CollegeHumor in high school, not college, but in like 2011, 2012. And I watched a lot. And so I've seen Josh's face like for many hours, technically, I would think. Because he did a lot of videos. He was in a lot of Hardly Workings. He had his own series, Josh's Mindhouse, on CollegeHumor, and which kind of that name moved over to his current podcast, The Mindhouse, which is very similar to this one, actually. And we were both kind of influenced, I suppose, by WTF with Mark Maron. We talk about that a little bit. And that's a great podcast as well. So we have a great conversation about his life and just things. He was on Pokemon, and I was really surprised by that. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to our conversation, and I'll see you on the other side, and I'll give you some more plugs and things and context. So make sure to listen all the way through to the end. How's your podcast doing? How's the Mind House?
The Mind House is, I think it's going pretty well. I just started it kind of vocationally, because I had a pretty dry January, and I just thought, why not start doing some interviews with people? It could be a cool experience, and I'd thought a lot about doing it really since then. I'd been on Pete Holmes's podcast, You Made It Weird, and that was kind of part of the inspiration, because it was kind of an excuse for me and a platform for me to like be myself, but also to like sit down and actually have a conversation with people that I really loved and admired, and that I really haven't had an opportunity to do that with. So by the time that like Jake and Amir approached me through HeadGum, I had like 10 in the can, just like interviews that I just kind of amassed and have been releasing on my own on like Simplecast or whatever. And and now, and then they came to me. I was like, oh, I guess I need to create a queue for you guys. So, but it's been going great ever since. So I'm excited to keep doing them.
Yeah. Did you see any kind of increase in numbers or whatever when you went over to HeadGum, or has it been kind of a steady kind of situation?
There's definitely been more traffic to like, things like the Twitter and stuff like that. But I don't really look at the analytics. I mean, it's cool to see on. We're on Spreaker now, and it's a really cool podcast hosting program because it shows you really good analytics. So it's just cool to see like, oh cool, I have like in the 80s of thousands of listeners, of plays, only in a matter of weeks. So that's really exciting, and I mean, you can't go wrong going with anything Jake and Amir do, because they're so beloved by like so many people.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So your description of your podcast, I think on the HeadGum site, says something like something about WTF. Mark Maron's podcast. How deep does that inspiration go? Because this podcast right now is in fact inspired by WTF and what Mark Maron does.
Yeah, he's like he's an inspirational dude. His show is what I love about his show, and I've only listened to a handful of episodes, but I've loved every one. What I love about his show and Pete's even too is they are combinations of, and I guess Mark's more so, like very real, kind of grounded conversations where just like the gloves are off and there just aren't any pretenses. It's just kind of a natural conversation. I mean, even Obama,
Yeah, that was an awesome interview.
Yeah, and the combination too. What I like about Pete's is that he just. It's a kind of a vehicle for himself, because he's a comedian. So you just get to see how great and funny and quick he is. So I don't want to, necessarily think of the Mind House as some, kind of vehicle for me. But it is a really easy place to be myself, and I think people respond to not only that in performers, but to me as a performer, I think what fans I do have, I have a sense that they're kind of digging, seeing more of who I am, and so it just made a lot of sense,
Yeah, and I mean I don't think there's anything wrong with saying it's a podcast is a vehicle. I mean, I guess vehicle has like maybe a negative connotation around it, but I mean people got into podcasting just to like. Some podcasts they just want to talk to their friends, and then it turns into something big, like the Ricky Gervais show. I don't know if you've ever listened to, but it's like they're just hanging out, just shooting the shit, and that's what people want, I think, now.
Yeah, I think we could all benefit from some simplicity and some from some honesty here and there. I also from my place. I want to talk to people who are like successful in what I do. Everyone I talk to, I admire, and I'm also jealous of. I want to be where everyone I talk to is. I have an episode in the queue from an interview with Don Luby, who wrote my 1992 diary, which is a book about that features pictures of her when she was an awkward kid in high school, and it's sort of slivers of her diary from that awkward time, and she's a published author. That's something I want to do. Matt McGorry is a TV star. I want to be on TV, and I want to talk to all these people about their experiences, about the weight stigmas with all of my my female guests who are filmmakers, especially. I want to talk to them about their experiences being a female in industry, and talk to them about any sort of tribulations they've come up against, and difficulty, and being a woman in this industry is something that I believe so strongly in, and I want so badly to create a vehicle for all these talented women. Oops, there's my text message that I know, and it's just great to talk about kind of everything from the issue of the lack of female writers in the industry to also doing silly voices. So it's
I listened to a bit of your episode with Thomas Middleditch, and that was something, a good something to be clear.
Yeah.
But it seems like you kind of go deeper in other episodes as well, and I think that's a good balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
To strike. As far as this podcast goes, that's what you're saying is hitting really close to that. It's the point of this podcast is to just kind of touch on wide variety of vocations or careers or whatever that people aren't necessarily familiar with, and I think that's what a lot of great interview podcasts do.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have all kinds of guests on.
Well, so am I one of your first guests? Is this a new?
You are definitively the first I've secured an interview with. I've reached out to some other people, but it's a slow process. But I'm planning on getting a bunch in the can, and then, like you said, just kind of piecemealing them out.
Well,
it's such a slow process.
I'm very available, so I'm super happy to have been the first one to lock in. Very available.
Where are you from? Just in general, where were you born? Grew up?
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., George Washington University Hospital, really specific. And I grew up for the most part in Woodstock, New York, but for the first 7 or 8 years I was in Potomac, Maryland, which is was at the time kind of the Silicon Valley of the East Coast. A lot of perfume and great cars, cul-de-sacs and suburban living, and then my family moved to Woodstock, New York, and we moved into the house that my mom grew up in, and there was also sort of the vacation house that we've been going to my whole life. My mom and her family kept this really cool country house in Woodstock, sort of in the mountains near town. So. I moved to Woodstock at 9 or 10 years old, and that's when I basically discovered that I wanted to act, and that I was I just kind of embraced the silly kid side of me, because Maryland didn't really have a youth theater community that I could join. But the first thing I did when I moved to Woodstock was join the Woodstock Youth Theater, and so Woodstock is really where I should say I'm from, but originally DC and Potomac. Super white bread suburbs.
So what was going on in D.C. that you were born there? Were your parents involved with politics at all, or was it just kind of
no? My dad was he was sort of a counselor for troubled youth rather, and my mom was in administration. And she'd work with special ed, so they were both kind of in the educational system in some capacity, and then Dad got into finance. Mom got sort of deeper into school stuff. She eventually became a high school principal in Woodstock. So she was my high school principal for my last year of school, which was great because.
Oh, okay, good. I can hear it go either way.
I liked it. People were like, "Oh, that's gonna suck," right? My mom is awesome. Everybody, notoriously loved her, and the school district is not, notorious for being terrific. And she's, was one of the administrators. Sort of, her legend is kind of, treating students like people and not like students, and I think that was something that everyone appreciated and why she was so beloved. So, that's what they did. Now they're basically retired.
That's good. What was it about Woodstock? Was Woodstock kind of a product of you wanting to become an actor? Because you mentioned that Potomac didn't have those situations. Was Woodstock aptly named? Was it kind of like a very creative place?
It's a creative little town. There's hippies about and a lot of art. A lot of retired New York professionals move up there. I mean, artists from all over the world, move there and sort of blossom there. A lot of them retire there, but it certainly was the first place where I had lived that had a very active, kind of pungent theater community because they smelled. No, because I wanted to join. I mean, that too. But I just I went to, I think to see Bye Bye Birdie was one of the first performances I went to see it when we had just moved there, something to do with my parents, a real hot date. And I basically was watching these kids up there. One of them in particular was playing he was a young kid. Obviously they all were, but playing this parent in Bye Bye Birdie, the dad, and he was a quirky character. And I remember it, sort of watching, going oh, I could do that. He's funny, but I could do that funnier. And super cocky. And,
right. Well, yeah, I've felt that feeling many times, and then I find out that, oh wait, I can't quite do it better. But
it's audacious, feeling to have. But when you're a kid, you're just well, fuck it, maybe I'll see if I can try, give a try at theater, because I really did. I really did want to, I wanted to act. I realized it certainly, much more when I moved to Woodstock, because it just felt, the opportunity was there. It may very well have been there in Maryland, but Woodstock was oh yeah, here's the Woodstock Youth Theater, And then once I was kind of in that family, once I joined, I was in pretty much every production up until I graduated high school. So from 7th to 12th grade.
That's a lot of theater doing theater. Were you one of the theater kids? Is basically what I'm getting at.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's this cool thing. You're in school, and there are, not to sound like it's a plot of Mean Girls or anything, but there are jocks and hot girls, and people that would never talk to you, and people that make you feel weird, and then you go to, you go to theater camp, or you go, after school to rehearsal space, and all of these kids from 7th grade through senior year are all in the same boat, and they're all supposed to make an ass out of themselves, and they're all up there singing and with their voices cracking, and they're all in the same boat. There's really no room to make fun of each other. There's only room to kind of well, we're here to make asses of ourselves, and that's part of the bond. It brings kids out of their shell. I mean, I certainly acted with kids that, didn't want to necessarily be acting and had no business doing it, but it was it's a great thing to do. Maybe their parents wanted to kick them out of the house for a little bit, but I'd highly recommend to any kid to do it, regardless of what they end up doing in their careers, because it's so valuable. As you're building your imagination, building relationships with friends, you're finding out if you're straight or you're gay, or you're neither, or you're crushing on your little co-stars. It was awesome. I owe so much to it, and the teachers were great. The directors were amazing.
Yeah, I feel like teachers really make the drama program, because if they're not in it, you're not gonna have fun.
I never really had a director that was, you could tell that they wanted to be famous. It was we had, I mean, maybe they did, but it never really got in the way of the artistry. Beth Lipton was our first director, and she kicked everyone's ass and was pretty militant, but also had a killer sense of humor and a dark sense of humor at that. But if you missed one step in, choreography or what have you, she'd really let you have it. If your lines weren't memorized, she'd really let you have it. And then the other flip side of that was working with Lola Cohen, who, around 16 years old, I started studying Strasberg with her. She was one of Lee Strasberg's last students. So I was doing method with her, and then she directed my last show in Woodstock, which was Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played Nick Bottom and was basically doing a Kevin Kline impression the whole time because I liked the movie and didn't understand Shakespeare. But that, you know, on the flip side of it was like, oh shit, I'm working with like a real New York method professor who, you know, is another one of these incredible artists who's retired in Woodstock and just imparting her incredible knowledge. So I learned a shit ton all before, of course, I moved to the city and learned more.
Yeah, that's awesome that you got all that in, I guess, you said 7th grade through 12th grade, mostly high school, I would guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of my biggest regrets from high school was I was in the drama class all 4 years, but I never did an out-of-class like production. And my high school girlfriend, who I'm still with, was the drama girl, and she would try to get me to do it, but I guess I wasn't out of my shell yet, as they say. But
she was the Kristen Stewart in that Ben Foster movie.
I don't appreciate you calling my girlfriend Kristen Stewart. No, I'm just kidding. But sure, I don't know. I'm not familiar with that movie.
Oh my God, I'm going to IMDb it right now because I feel like an idiot for not knowing it off the top of my head, and I watch it all the damn time.
Okay. Yeah, no. So that's great that you got, and especially that like professional experience with you know, a student of Strasberg's and stuff like that at a relatively young age. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was killer. And by the way, it was Kirsten Dunst. I got it.
Oh, that's a little bit better.
Yeah, and the movie was Get Over It.
I'm not familiar.
With Ben Foster and Cisco as well. Okay,
the Cisco part is makes it sound a little more attractive.
No, absolutely.
So you clearly you were doing these, I guess you were doing like dramatic acting in addition to some comedic acting. You said you played Nick Bottom, but you definitely went into a comedy career. What were some of those like early comedy influenced TV, movie, anything that made you kind of be that guy?
So many. Like I always say it's Robin Williams because he was the most profound for and to me. I think maybe even subconsciously when I was watching Aladdin, just appreciating and absorbing that performance in a way that wasn't entirely conscious. He was major for me, and John Leguizamo too was really up there. And the through line with the both of them is that here are two comedians who have such an incredible imagination and do characters so beautifully. And are the kind of quadruple threats, you know, they sing, they dance, they do stand up, and they're like dramatic actors. And that was what I really wanted for a long time. There's a piece of me that still wants to kind of do that. But, you know, even earlier on than that, you know, I was like obsessed with random shit like Looney Tunes, but would also sneak to the basement and watch Tales from the Crypt, which was like campy horror. I have an older brother and a sister, so they would, my sister being more so the horror fan, we'd watch just like, you know, bad campy 80s horror movies, everything from like Friday the 13th to Nightmare on Elm Street, and Freddy was kind of like a cartoon character in himself. So I had the dark sensibility, I had like the super goofy kind of esoteric thing going in my other influences in John and in Robin, and I watched just a shit ton of SNL, you know, all the guys that we grew up and women we grew up watching who were so funny, like Phil Hartman and Chris Farley and Jan Hooks and Ellen Clayhorn, you know, every single one of them, just like obsessed with them.
Yeah, I you know, this isn't like not a dig or anything, but I can totally see the Robin Williams influence.
Oh, I get it a lot.
That's awesome. Also, how fucking sad is it that
it's pretty needless, I think is the word. Which was the first time I'd ever heard the word needless used was in reference to a friend of mine's suicide. When I mentioned it to, you know, I broke the news to another mutual friend, and they said, "Wow, that's incredibly needless," and it is. It just, you know, beyond anything else, it really opens your eyes up to really needing to be aware of people in your life that might be kind of giving you those, hints of needing help.
Totally, yeah.
And also understanding too that there, when it is in Robin's case, it's a disease that you can't, there really isn't a whole way out of it other than to continue to be there as much as you possibly can. Some people, I imagine were expecting that was going to happen, which sounds like an awful thing to say, but it's sometimes, when people were talking about how could he do such a thing, leaving his family behind, and that's not fair because the disease doesn't empathize with anything. It eats away at you, and that's what's tragic about it. It's, now we no longer have this like incredible soul, but he'll, he's the good dude's a fucking legend, and his stuff's gonna live on. I'm excited to, when I have kids, like show them as close to everything he did that's worth showing them, and someday if I can act at the caliber he did or do the size of jobs that he did, I'd love to kind of dedicate or keep his energy in my mind, and just he's the bar, he set the bar for me very early.
It was one of those things that it like transcended in quotes like celebrity death or whatever, when you see that kind of stuff. I was like messed up for like a good while and just in my mood. But anyways, let's move on to something a little more.
Let's keep going on suicides.
So you mentioned SNL. I was gonna mention before I diverge on that path. I cannot like resist watching those VH1 like SNL and the Whatever things. Even though they're so like surface level or whatever, I just like there's something about it that I'm like it captures how good that show was at times. And I'm not super familiar with a lot of the older stuff, but I've gone back and watched a lot of it. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on SNL's greatness, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. It is great. I appreciate how it's kind of it's morphed too. What it's become, and it's cool. They're still taking chances and stuff. So yeah, hell of a beast, that SNL.
Yep, definitely. So what was kind of because the whole point of this show is to kind of talk about how you got to where you are now. So what was that point that set you on this path? Like, what was the actual career turn, more so than like influences? I mean, like just kind of what actually happened. What job did you get that kind of set you down this path?
Well, to be clear, like where I am now is, I'm by no means a celebrity. To some people who stop me on the street, it's because of CollegeHumor. But where I am now is a guy with about like 2,000 videos under his belt from that life, and in various capacities, whether in them or writing them or co-directing them or directing them or what have you. And who now is a commercial director developing a show with Comedy Central with my partner Vince. And writing as much as possible, but the beginning of it all was really moving to the city and going to acting school and meeting these incredible people. The couple summers before of which I'd met Sam Reich and Elaine Carroll at a summer program, and they're both married now. I met when they met, which I'm really proud of, and they Sam went off to basically head the department at CollegeHumor Originals. But before then, he and myself, a guy named Matt Moore, and an actor named Elaine Carroll, who I mentioned is his wife, formed a sketch group in New York City called Dutch West, and this is before YouTube.
What year was this about?
We formed in about 2003. So we started making videos, and we had no idea that, after 2 minutes and 20 seconds, your attention span kind of drops like a turd in a punch bowl. But here's my Robin Williams joke from inside the actor's studio for anyone who's seen it. But they really did, we would make we wouldn't make 2-minute videos. We would just basically make 10-minute shorts, and then of course you have to edit them together. Sam learned how to edit on Craigslist, by inviting someone to his apartment on Maiden Lane, and training him, and basically uploading these 10-minute quote unquote sketches to QuickTime. So this was before Flash, and we did about 5 or so of those before creating sketches that were uploaded to Flash that were shorter, and then we caught the attention of companies like Super Deluxe at the time, and eventually CollegeHumor, who essentially said, come do for us what you've been doing for yourselves, making these kind of high gloss looking sketches for little to no money. And the high gloss piece of it was because, essentially the result of us pulling some money together and buying a DVX, it was a DVX 100 camera, which basically made product look like film. It shot to look like film, but it was digital. So we were one of the first, to sort of make videos and put them online in that capacity. And when CollegeHumor started hiring us one by one, that's when we started to, become a CollegeHumor cast members, you could say. It was Vince and Sam and myself who ended up officially joining. And that was like, that was the beginning of for me, like a 5.5 or 6 year stint as an on-staff actor and writer and a director. It was really an amazing gig because it was like, oh, cool, health insurance, and you're working with your friends, and you have a salary gig, but it's sort of flexible. Some days you're in the office, most times you're on set. You're hiring UCB actors, so you can you have an excuse to work with people like Jim Santangeli or Delaney or any of these people, Kroll at the time, Zach Woods, Aubrey Plaza, Thomas Middleditch. These are all people who, used to do CollegeHumor sketches who we kind of came up with. And, it was an incredible time. I call it like the best waiting tables job I ever had was CollegeHumor. It was where I cut my teeth doing everything. And it was the best kind of in-between job for a guy who wanted to be an actor, but it turned into like 6 years.
Yeah, how long? What was the span on that? Like what year to what year?
I think for me it was 2008 to 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What were some of those like early shorts you were doing that caught the attention of CollegeHumor? Like what were kind of just the premises of them?
One of the biggest ones we did got the attention of the talent agency UTA, Jack Black's agent at the time specifically, and it was a sketch called Bigfoot Child Molester, which was basically like shot in the tone of Sleepers and Mystic River, which is super random, but about 2 guys who were molested by Bigfoot when they were kids, of which we see flashes of in the beginning. And then it jump cuts to the future when these 2 men are sitting at the counter of a diner, and they've got their big mustaches, and they look kind of hardened, which is really just Sam Reich and I with fake mustaches and flannels on. And one of us goes to the bathroom and sees the guy who molested them when they were kids sitting there reading the paper, which is a direct kind of callback to Sleepers, which is Kevin Bacon's character, except that the character was Bigfoot. So he sees Bigfoot, he goes in the bathroom, and he washes his face, and he's kind of having all these, delirium tremens. Bad memories come rushing back, and there's a flashback of, Bigfoot, like, raping us in the woods. And then it just ends with us approaching his table, and Matt Moore played Bigfoot and played him brilliantly. It was just like, oh yeah, you're the Nickelodeon Tour Run boys. And then we shot him, and that was it. And for some reason, it did very well. It was like, I guess you could say, a word today they might use for it if we release it would be quote unquote buzzworthy, because it's like, oh shit, you're covering this like intense topic, but making it funny. And that kind of got things going for us. I mean, we had, we must have done close to 50 of them, different shorts, and that was that really kicked things off. We were a respectable crew.
Right. It's weird to say, but I also have a Bigfoot short in my past. Basically, the premise was that this was like high school, so it's even more cringeworthy to watch. But I see Bigfoot out in the wilderness. I'm not saying this is good. And then it like cuts, and then it's me like going insane. And I had long hair at the time, so I'm like brushing it back, and I have like toothpaste on my face and stuff like that. This is like freshman year in high school, but I'm sure yours was much better.
Oh my God! Well, who knows? I mean, at least yours didn't. I mean, ours did have kids getting raped in it. So
that's true. Yeah,
that was a lot of fun though.
So I guess over those 6 years at CollegeHumor, because this is where I was introduced to your talents. In my some point in high school, I watched all of the Jake and Amir and all of the Hardly Working videos that had been released, and this was like, I don't know, whatever that point was, 2011, 2012. And I just really just fell down that rabbit hole one summer. So at that point, what were you doing things differently than what you were doing before? Because you mentioned that you were writing, directing, acting. Did any of those things change throughout all the years? Like doing more, some more than others?
Well, I started as a director, so the first, I'd say most of 2008 was me directing, kind of cameoing and stuff. That eventually transitioned into me sort of joining the writing staff officially, which I was a little resistant to. You know, my one kind of, I wouldn't even call it a bump or a beef with CollegeHumor, because it is what it is. The name is CollegeHumor. It's just that the demographic is young. You know, it's 13 to 34-year-old males. So you couldn't write sketches outside of the kind of experiences of that demographic, or at least that when you did, there was more resistance to those types of ideas that were sort of off the rails, esoteric, maybe a little more narrative. But the great thing was, Sam Reich, who essentially ran the writer's room and the whole department, was down to let me try stuff. I think at one point he called me in and said, "Are you okay? I get the sense that you're kind of like unhappy." This was like maybe at the 3 years in or something. So when I joined CollegeHumor, I didn't want a desk job, which it's not fair to say that it was a desk job, but I wanted to act, and I didn't want to direct and write a bunch of sketches about boobs and beer and video games, which, to be fair, that's not entirely what our output was. Certainly not the Hardly Workings even, because those were kind of more experimental, but they didn't have the same kind of budget behind them. But I wanted to do stuff that I was excited about, which was acting in prosthetics, character acting. I loved Adult Swim at the time. I discovered Chris Lilly. I wanted to do something down the lines of what he'd done. I was liking what Ricky Gervais was doing, So, I got to do these kind of experimental series that started with Josh's Mindhouse, which was like basically my own Hardly Working spinoff, where I had full creative control just to kind of do whatever. We got to do some amazing stuff. There were like 3 in particular that were super kind of fun and I guess super me, and the rest of them were a little hodgepodge together. They were Mindhouse, I think it was called Sniper. Another one was called Super Punch, and another one is called Mind Control. And those kind of tie for me in terms of like, what I loved, the epitome of what I loved doing, like with at that time with that series. And then the graduation from that were the Hello, My Name Is series, which was the improvised talk show with like prosthetics, which is super fun. And then the VHS series, a collaboration with Mitch McGee that was like, again, prosthetics, but the whole idea was that we sort of treated them as if they were VHS tapes that were found in a box somewhere.
Those were good.
Yeah, thank you. And they weren't like they didn't get 50 million views. I think because the audience wasn't entirely ready for it. A, but B, no matter where you do that type of material, not everyone is ready to kind of sit down and watch weird.
They probably didn't even know what VHS tapes were, so.
Yeah, probably true. I've heard,
at least some of them, part of the demographic.
Yeah, I have fans who scratch their head when I mention Chris Farley, so which is kind of a crazy thing, but also like, hey, we're all getting old. I didn't always know who Jack Benny was.
Well, I mean, I'm 18, just to let you know. So I am like, in a lot of these interviews and things I do, I'm usually considered the young one, But I find it really important to go back and check out that stuff. Like Chris Farley is one of my favorite comedians, and I did not see him at all when I was alive. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, when did he die?
Probably 1990. It was in the 1990s, I think, right? Late.
Yeah, like kind of late, like mid to late
98
90s
or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I was like barely conscious, but I think it's really important to kind of go back and try to learn about that kind of stuff. And I think in a kind of tangential way, like the VHS tapes thing kind of imparts some of that experience that younger people never had. For example, watching VHS tapes.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a testament to time, right? It's crazy how things are. It makes you realize like why our parents didn't know how to play video games.
Right.
Like, oh, this is fun. Let me give it a try. Oh, okay. I can't seem to make the character turn around. All right, I give up. I'm gonna go make pie. It's shit moves fast, and it's it's extremely likely, and I think it extremely is that. My comedy, my sensibility, and my product is going to exist in a bit of a time vacuum. It's going to have its time. Ben Stiller, has graduated from the Ben Stiller Show, years in the early '90s to being a massive movie star and like keeping up with television, trying to put himself out there and constantly reinventing himself. Which that's like something you aspire to for sure. But it's kind of a nutty thing every once in a while to go, oh yeah, that was once popular and now no one gives a shit,
Yeah, that happens like every 6 months now.
Yeah.
With apps or what have you. But so, how are you feeling towards the end of your run at College Humor? Why did you decide to leave, and what did you leave to do? Like, what was kind of the first few things you did after College Humor?
Well, we were offered the job to come out to L.A., and we decided it'd be best to stick it out in New York because we had my partner and I, Vince, we directed a few television commercials during our time at College Humor. We had to be sneaky about it because, regardless of how fun a place it was to work, it was still a corporation. Right. So when you did get these other jobs that would pay very well, you'd have to lie and say you're sick, or you'd have to say you have a dentist appointment and then never come in, stuff like that. There's only so creative you could get. But we were getting commercial work and it was going well. And when the time came, we decided let's just see if we can stick it out and make some money anyway doing commercials. And yeah, that's why we stuck. We were with a production company at the time that was really great. We jumped to another one that we're still with called Big Block. Live, and they're incredible. So it was really just like we've been there, we've done that, we've made thousands of shorts, we've had plenty of experience with celebrities and short form and that sort of thing, sketch. Let's get into the marketing world, the client world, the soul sucking world of commercials. And thankfully, we've worked on some incredible stuff. What
were some of those anything I would recognize?
I'm trying to think of like the big fun ones. We just did a big thing for Google that I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk about, but that'll roll out soon, and I'll keep you updated on that. But we did like a really cool Sam Adams spot with an actor named Brendan Mulligan, and that was with the entire team at Sam Adams. So we got to meet the what's his face, Jim something.
The guy that's in all the commercials.
Yeah. His bearded cohorts and all the employees. Right. We got to do a really fun commercial for an ill-fated wireless network by Google, actually called Republic Wireless. That was super fun and funny. We did like 9 Geico promos that were all great for the It's What You Do campaign. It was really fun. We've had some incredible clients. We just did something with Bob Vila that I also don't know if I can talk about, but it was super, super, super fun, and he was lovely and a legend and a gentleman. So all that's been great, and like this Oreo commercial or a series of Oreo spots with TJ Miller.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen some of those.
Yeah, and then that kind of graduated to, we started getting recommended to people to do some of their Comedy Central projects. Like we did a series called Strong Island for CC Studios with John Gabers and Justin Tyler. That was a lot of fun. And a Broad City, the Broad City segment of the Christmas special that Comedy Central put on last year, which was amazing. So, and then and then kind of tangentially, I've been working with Condé Nast, Vogue, and GQ. We directed a series called Most Expensive as Shit with 2 Chainz, which was really fun. And there was one more that was kind of nutty. Oh yeah, then Vogue flew us to Paris to shoot Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, and Anna Wintour for Zoolander 2, which was like top secret at the time. And yeah, awesome. It was great. That was probably I'd say the biggest highlight of the year.
Right. Yeah. You joked about the soul sucking corporate world, but have you been able to get yourself into these commercials in some way? Because I interviewed this is not for this podcast, but for another story I did, a video game developer who had made a video game, didn't do so well, so they went and just did commercial work for a long time because they were very gifted, like animated studio.
Sure.
And so they did animated commercials, but they found that they actually had more freedom doing that than like working with, video game publishers and stuff like that. Funny. So how has that been for you?
We really do have a good amount of freedom in commercials these days because, and it has been more fun. It's not, it's not what it used to be. It's not. I mean, I'm sure like there are some clients that will have more quote unquote soul sucking jobs than others. But what it is, what you come into contact with these days are clients that want to collaborate with you, that want to put your stink on stuff. They're coming to Vince and I because they know we have the experience, they know we're funny, that we've worked with celebrities. But the way it works these days is clients will come to you, agencies will come to you with a kind of a nugget of an idea or a concept and say, how would you build this out? So you're really collaborating with these folks on the ground floor, and sometimes it's not. It's in varying degrees. Sometimes it's more quote unquote collaborative than others, but it's always collaborative because and it has to be. Agencies have on staff writers, but we're comedians. We do this thing for a living. We don't write commercials. But we can take a nugget of an idea to sell, Ruffles potato chips and blow it out and make it, make the lines as funny as possible and the action as funny as possible and shoot it funny. And that's fun.
That's funny because I've had this observation the past couple of years that commercials are getting really weird. Like that's just kind of like the way that things are marketed now, which is more entertaining than how it used to be marketed, like, just buy this, it is good for you. And they, that's the nature of marketing, but it's fun to see kind of a creative, somewhat entertaining take happening all across the board, like with like a bunch of corporations.
And you are, yeah. I mean, I think one of the most exciting commercials to come out of this past year, I think it was the GE spot from, I think Eric Wareheim directed them.
Oh God.
With Jeff Goldblum. It's like this.
Oh yeah.
Goldblum commercial about light bulbs. It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that GE would go, you know what, we want to get weird, for this Bob Vila thing with the client that, will soon be revealed once it's released. Like, it was crazy that they wanted to get like that kind of weird and have that much fun. The bigger commercial, the bigger client, the more conservative. It's no secret that Ford is a very conservative client or would be a more conservative brand. They're not going to want to have like, weird costumed little people, dancing around a fire, with like quick cutty, Tim and Eric type style. But they do really, clients like that do aspire to copy Old Spice, and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, that's kind of where that started, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really fun thing for us because it just means we have more creative freedom all around. That's an exciting thing. But again, I mean, we had a lot of fun because commercials they're kind of like, you know, it's kind of like working on a sorry about all the text.
Sorry.
It's kind of like working on a little, you know, on a little expensive short, and it's always a little bit of a challenge. But once you've done your shoot, you're done. You know, you can go back in your inbox and delete everything, and that's my favorite part. You can wipe your hands clean of it, move on to the next thing, and you know, if it went well, you can expect a call from them, you know, later. Then there are a ton of brilliant, talented directors, you know, not limited to people like Christopher Guest and Spike Jonze who direct commercials frequently. Right. So that's cool to know too.
So how have kind of your acting pursuits been doing? I guess since you left CollegeHumor, I looked at your IMDb. Is that pretty accurate?
Well, I just did. I don't know how accurate it is now. It's sometimes it certainly ebbs and flows, but there are a couple really cool things, kind of in the gamut. I was in Jake and Amir's pilot for True TV. Awesome. So I think that's all I can say about it right now. But you know, if they get picked up, I think you might see more of me if they like what I did. Awesome. So that's really fun. And yeah, beyond that, just a lot of auditioning for stuff. And I gotta say, there's good shit out there. You know, scripts you get as an actor, you know, they can be pretty disheartening. But I think because sensibilities are changing and like that's what you're seeing in the commercial world, etc. Material's good. There's like good stuff out there. There's always going to be garbage. There's always going to be, you know, shitty sitcoms, and, you know, white guy meets white girl, comedies. But there's also really cool, different stuff out there. You know, it's amazing that we have Broad City. You know, it's great that we have humor and great that we have, you know, Man Seeking Woman. They're just like,
I've been really bad about not watching Broad City. I need to watch it. Yeah. That seems like right up my alley.
It's really good. It's just, you know, it's cool to see relationship shows that are different. It's cool to see, you know, people exploring gay characters and transgender characters. I love what Orange Is the New Black does. I haven't seen the new season, you know, but I'm super proud of my buddy Matt McGorry, who's on the show, and you know, like Laverne Cox is on fire right now. You know, it's a fucking cool thing. Everybody's sensibility is changing. Everyone's, you know, kind of coming around to the idea that we're all human beings, and it doesn't matter what we look like or, you know, what our sexual preferences are or what have you. And that changes. With that changes comedic sensibility, dramatic sensibility. Maybe not so dramatic, but people are getting more savvy. And that's a cool thing. That's what makes it cool to be a commercial director too, beyond everything else. And on the narrative side, you know, you can't just write a simple film anymore that doesn't have some kind of genre or high concept twist to it, which is a good thing too in some cases. You know, you don't need to make Iron Man 4 every time. You can make a movie like Creep, which Mark Duplass just put out. You know. High concept but low budget and different and cool and fun, and it's great to see where shit's going.
Yeah, definitely. I have one question specifically about this IMDb that I'm looking at, because sometimes I don't know who handles IMDb or whatever, but people get credited for things and it's like somebody that has the same name but it's not them. Were you in the Pokemon TV show?
I was.
Okay, tell me how that came about, because that is, I was like scrolling through, I'm like, what is that? Why? Yeah. Not that it's a bad thing, just it kind of took me by surprise.
Yeah, no, they, my good friend Sarah Natacheni, she actually plays Ash.
Wow.
And she recommended me. I'd actually auditioned for Pokemon maybe 6 times. Like I'd gone in and read 6 or 7 times and only booked. Beyond that, like, you know, 2 or 3 things. I don't even know what they were. I've never seen them. I was so excited to do it. I just thought, you know, I don't really know anything about the mythology of the characters, but I you know, the engineer who also kind of I don't think he runs the show. He's like one of the producers, but he kind of gave me the background of all my characters and stuff like that. So that was super fun. Yeah, I love doing that type of stuff. I would love to do an animated film or television series of some kind, because you can do so much. It's super fun.
Well, I don't know if people know this, but voices are kind of your thing.
Yeah.
So I mean that fits.
Yeah,
voice acting.
I'd love to do more of it for sure.
Great. So I guess just as like a final, you kind of touched on the stuff that's going on, but is there anything that you want to tell people to check out that you've been doing? Stuff that's coming up really soon that you can talk about? Anything like that?
Man, stuff that I can talk about. Well, it literally is just ending right now on the East Coast, but it's always good to check out the site anyway. I'm one of the producers of a nonprofit called a nonprofit event called the Woodstock Comedy Festival, and it actually is put on in the town of Woodstock, where I came up and discovered that I might be able to do theater. Just this past weekend, they had amazing stand-up shows, and Robert Klein performed, and we had a short film block featuring movies from Todd Strauss-Schulson and Michael Stahl-David, and some other incredible filmmakers. We had a feature we showed. So that's like certainly a passion project that I unfortunately wasn't that involved in this past weekend because I'm in LA currently. But I guess that's the one thing I can mention is I'm directing with my partner 3 episodes of a true TV show called Adam Ruins Everything, which airs I think at the end of this month. So that'd be in the next week or so.
Who's in that?
So that show is concepted and stars concepted by and stars Adam Conover, who's a stand-up comedian. He did some Talking Head stuff on VH1, but he's super duper funny, and it's basically like this, sketch-based Mythbusters, I guess is kind of the easiest way to describe it. But even then, that doesn't fully do it justice. It's this genre-bending, really funny show that calls a bunch of social tropes out. It's really fun, and it's based on a series of videos directed by Paul Briganti for CollegeHumor by the same name.
Awesome. This is a side note. It's strange, I guess, but awesome that True TV is doing content like that. I mean, that's not where your mind goes when you think True TV.
They're finding their footing. I mean, they have cool programming right now. Jake and Amir's pilot would be with True TV if it goes.
Right.
And that was a really amazing project. And they seem, not hands off, but they understand that, the value of giving your artist full creative control. So CollegeHumor's got a pretty nice foothold with those guys between Jake and Amir's show and Adam Conover's show. Adam's is picked up, and Jake and Amir's is kind of you're waiting to hear about that. I don't know when they announce all that type of stuff, but it's just cool. They're experimenting with programming, and I was stoked to interview Kevin Barnett, who's one of the stars and head writer of Friends of the People. So I'm uploading that on this coming Tuesday. So that'll be the next Mindhouse episode, which I'm stoked about.
Great. So where can people find you? Twitter, Mindhouse.
Oh, just Josh Ruben. You'll find everything, but you got to spell it Ruben. Josh Ruben, and not like the sandwich.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. It's awesome that you. I said awesome a lot.
That's all right.
It's great.
Great adjective.
Cool. It's nice that you talked to me today.
Great guy, Josh Ruben is. Yep. I don't know why I didn't like Yoda speak there, but just as a note, as we were talking about the pilot that Jake and Amir were doing for their TV show on True TV, and unfortunately didn't get picked up. They announced that a month ago, on their podcast, and that's too bad. But just as an update on that, because like I said, this was recorded kind of out of time, but it's still timeless. huge thanks to Josh Ruben again. I don't know if I got across the fact that his saying yes really gave me a lot of confidence to keep on doing this and trying to get more people and everything. I had a great conversation. I'm glad he dealt with my awkwardness pretty well. I was very nervous because I'm a big fan, and it was my first one. And so check out all the stuff that he mentioned at the end of that interview and show him all your support. Now, next week, we're going to have Joey Esposito on the show. I say we, but I mean I am, because this is me. I'm a Renaissance man. I do everything for this podcast. No, but so Joey Esposito, who is he? He's a comic book writer. Very nice man. Again, here's the thing you're gonna probably find the most in when I describe my guests. They're very nice, for the most part. I mean, I haven't had one that wasn't nice, but that's usually my go-to thing, because I'm kind of blown away by how cool conversations I can have with these people. But Joey Esposito, he's written some great creator-owned stuff like Footprints and Pawn Shop, and he's done some cool stuff like backup stories for Sonic the Hedgehog, and he did something for a previously established universe that he didn't really like all that much, and we talk about that in the episode, of course. So be sure to tune in Monday, and again, I always say tune in and instantly go, why do I say that? Because we don't tune anything anymore. But check in on Monday to catch that interview. It's really good. I'm so excited for this podcast, guys. I'm so excited for it. I want people to listen. So, towards that end, if you want to catch that and you want to listen to all the episodes in the future, you should go to facebook.com, like the Butterfly Effect Podcast page, subscribe on YouTube at Butterfly Effect Podcast, and follow the podcast on Twitter at Butterfly Pod. Let me get that right. I got it wrong in the very first episode. So me, I know, guys. And then follow me on Twitter at Ettletod, ETTLETODD, for more like up-to-date things and just my ramblings and me, just me being me, and email the email, trettleman@gmail.com, trettleman@gmail.com, to give me your feedback. You just want to say hello, you want to come on the show if you are a creator of some kind, or you have an idea of someone, or you represent someone somehow and you're listening to this, and you want someone to be on the show, send that my way. You have feedback, concerns, you want to talk about your day, email me there. Yeah, cool.